Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the MIgardener channel. I'm really excited for this episode because in this episode we're going to be doing a plant death troubleshooting guide. Now, when I was deciding this episode, I didn't really understand exactly how I was going to format it. And so this is going to be a first episode in this series, and it's not going to be a regularly scheduled series because we don't always have plants dying here in the garden. But I figured, why hide something that can really serve as a positive learning experience for someone? Plants dying is a reality for any gardener that grows a fruit tree, a fruit bush, a vegetable, annual, perennial. It doesn't matter what it is. We lose plants as gardeners, and so instead of hiding it, instead of being ashamed that we lost a plant, and instead of just planting one and saying, "Ta-da! I've got a new plant here that you didn't see," I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you the plant that's dead here, and we're going to go through together and analyze why it died. If it's something that I did, I'll own it, and that way I learn as a gardener, and that way you all can learn as gardeners as well, so that you don't make the same mistake. If it's something that was pest related or disease related, we'll find that out as well. And so we can better assess as gardeners together the cause of death for this plant in hopes that you can then take that information to other plants that die in your garden, and you can find out through this troubleshooting guide roughly what might have been the cause of death for your plants as well. And we never like to see plants die, but again, it's just turning that negative into a positive and really being as transparent as possible, which is something I strive for on this channel. I don't ever want to seem like the most perfect gardener in the world, because I'm not. I make mistakes and things happen to me that are out of my control. And so as a gardener, I want to show you all that because I think it can really discourage a lot of beginning gardeners that see my garden and say, wow, he's got it all together. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's got beautiful plants. Everything's producing. Nothing is dying, because that's just not reality. That's just not the case. Let's jump on into it. So this is a pear tree. This is the Moon Glow pear. And I want to go through first the very first question that you want to ask yourself as a gardener. Was it a perennial? Okay, so if it was a perennial, you check mark yes. If it's an annual, the reason why it's dead is it dead because it's the end of the season? If it's dead because it's the end of the season, then nothing wrong happened. Now, because it's a perennial, we're going to go down another path there. If it's a perennial, was it healthy the year I planted it? So because a perennial it actually goes dormant during the winter and comes out of dormancy in the spring, was it healthy to begin with? Was it a healthy plant? My assessment of this plant was yes. It was very healthy when it was growing. Last year, we planted it for the first year, and it put out a lot of new growth. It even flowered, but it didn't fruit because we had a rather late frost. And even if it would have flowered, I probably would have picked the flowers off, because I don't like to let my fruit trees flower the first year if they are a newly planted tree that could undergo some stress that could be detrimental to it. So I didn't let it fruit, and it did not fruit. So it was doing fairly well, and it did put out a lot of new growth. And going into winter, it was showing no signs of disease or pests that I know of. So I'm going to say yes, it was healthy. If it wasn't healthy and it was already sick to begin with, that's probably why it's not alive now in the spring, or that's probably why it's not alive at the time that you're assessing the tree's death, is because it probably died during its dormant stage. So back a couple weeks ago, we did test to see. We used a bend test, we used a scrape test, we used some of those things to look at if the tree was still alive. And to my knowledge, from everything I could see, the scratch test showed positive that it was green. The bend test showed that there was moisture in the limbs, but for whatever reason, there's no buds. And so something happened from that, and I want to assess why. So let's go further, because I still have a question mark. Why didn't it come out of dormancy? It should have, but why didn't it? So let's take the next look. And let's look at the soil level and see if we can assess something there. Because if it was healthy going into dormancy, theoretically, if it's the right plant for the right zone, it should have came out of dormancy. And that's another thing that I really do want you to ask too. Should it have grown in your zone? Because if it went into dormancy healthy, but let's say you're in zone 4, but this tree is only zone hardy to maybe zone 5 or 6, it was growing out of its zone, meaning it was bound to die anyways because your winters are too harsh. If that is all okay and you're growing a plant that is correct for your zone, the next thing that I want you to check is soil level. That's usually where a lot of your issues begin, especially if the tree was healthy. All right, so we're going to slowly look up and down the branches, working our way down to soil level, and see if there are any lesions, if there's any scars, or if there's any signs of pest stress, places where there would have been damage. And I don't see any. I don't see any at all. So we've worked our way down the trunk of the tree, all the way down to soil level, assessing areas that may pique our interest for causes of this tree dying here. The first thing that catches my interest is I see a lot of bite marks. These bite marks are indicative of a chewing animal like a rabbit or a mouse that is most likely came in the winter time. And what it's done is it has chewed away some of this outer bark layer and exposed the cambium layer, which is that first layer within the bark. It's the most susceptible to disease. And when it's opened up, disease can occur. So now I'm left with the question of, was this plant killed because of disease, or was this plant killed because of another reason? Was it killed because too much of this bark was removed and the plant simply was stressed and could not receive nutrients and water during the springtime? Well, as we mentioned, the leaves were receiving moisture because they were, or the branches were receiving moisture because they were green and they were bendable, but they were not able to push themselves out of dormancy. So I'm guessing it was because of a weakness. If you look down here, you'll notice there's lots of new growth. This new growth is coming from the graft point on this tree here. This pear was a grafted pear. Almost all of your pears will be grafted, especially you get them from some nursery. They'll pick a nursery stock that is chosen for, maybe it's semi-dwarf, maybe it's dwarf, maybe the rootstock is chosen for productivity or hardiness. Either way, the rootstock is producing lots of new side growth here. These side growths are from the rootstock, not from the actual graft point. The graft point is right at soil level and it's indicated by this blue mark here. And so if there's growth below that, it shows that the roots were healthy and there's nothing wrong with the root system, which means something happened from the soil level upwards. And so what we have to assess is, did this tree die because of a disease or because of the animal? And because there's such severe damage done to the base of this tree here through chewing, my guess would be that it is most likely due to the animal chewing the tree out. And if the tree did get some form of disease, that would be kind of a secondary concern. So now that we discovered the cause of what killed the tree, as well as which animal did the damage, I want to talk about future prevention so this doesn't happen again, because obviously we're going to replant this tree. We're going to replant a tree in this tree's place, I should say. And I want to make sure that it does not happen again. And so since we've discovered that a rabbit or a mouse has done this, the first question we have to ask is why? Well, the reason why is obviously a food source. If it were something like a deer and it was up higher, it might be because it's marking the tree with its scent, and that's really possible. That happens a lot during rooting season. However, with mice and rabbits, they look for a food source, and their food source is during the winter when there's not a whole lot of other food around for them to eat. They go to young shoots, young trees, things that have tender bark that is highly nutritious for them to consume to get them through the winter months. And so what we're going to do going forward is during the winter, we're going to put on a cuff. Cuffs are never great looking, they're a little unsightly, but they do save the life of your tree. And I'll post a link to what I'm going to be using and personally purchasing for my trees going forward. I'm not just going to put it on this tree that I'm replacing, I'm going to put it on all of my trees, because I want to make sure that from here on out, I don't have to deal with a dead tree. And this mistake was totally on me. This is something that I could have easily prevented, and is definitely a mistake that I should have foreseen, especially living in Michigan, where we get very harsh winters, a lot of snow. And we do have a lot of mice and rabbits in the area. So this is definitely on me, and I'll own this. Now, had I just planted these and wanted to go as all natural as possible, this one would have kind of been out of my control. This would have been, you know, just a pest or an animal related casualty. But because it's my home garden and because I am here and I can prevent these things, I'll own this one. This was definitely my mistake as a gardener. I definitely should have foreseen that, and you know, that's just something you learn going forward. So now I know that you definitely need to add protection on young trees in this area, and that's something that I wouldn't have known had we not gone through step by step, found out why the tree died, and even had a tree die in the first place. So had everything been healthy, it wouldn't have served as a learning experience. So I'm glad I learned. I'm glad I finally found this out, and I hope that you all enjoyed as well. Now remember, going forward, we're going to make this a series. So if you did enjoy, give this video a thumbs up and let me know in the comments box below if this is a series you think is worth doing and worth keeping around, because I think it's great, but if you don't think it's great, well then there's no point in doing it. So I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. As always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel reminding you to grow big or go home, and we'll catch you all later. See ya.